Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Warriors suffer another defeat, this time 114-98 to the Miami Heat at Chase Center on Tuesday night. Apologies, first time around there, had some issues with the microphone. Should be back up and running now. Might mean there's not as many people in the live chat for this game. Might not be that many people because it's pretty hard to be motivated about talking, pretty motivated to be talking about the Warriors right now. It's a struggle. It's really ugly, particularly offensively. And in terms of this game, given the context of it, you could argue that this was maybe the Warriors' worst loss of the season, like worse than the Kings' loss, that 30-point defeat on what was it, Sunday, and then worse even maybe than the 50-point loss to Memphis that they had last month. So you come up against a team who are obviously having some issues of their own with Jimmy Butler and that whole situation and saga at present. They come off a double overtime loss to the Sacramento Kings the night before, 24 hours earlier. And they've also had blowout. I think they got blown out by 36 points to the Jazz. They've had other losses recently. Things really going badly for the Heat. And the Warriors just come out and don't play with the energy and the spirit, something that Steve Kerr spoke about after the game. They just don't come out with anywhere near the right level of spirit and energy to match Miami in this game. And the Heat, get up 13 by halftime. And the Warriors did get back into it. They got within one in the fourth quarter. And yet, unfortunately, they let go of the rope and let go of any opportunity of getting back into that game and winning it. And it's just a really utterly disappointing loss. And I think as a fan, it's really interesting because I think all fans, I think Steve Kerr is the coach, like we all understand it's a long 82-game season. We understand you're going to have off nights and the execution isn't always going to be there. You're not going to win every single game, particularly for this pretty average, middling roster, which is probably going to be around 500 on the season. Hopefully a few more games beyond that, somewhere between 6 and 10 in the West, let's say. Like, you're not going to win every game. And I think as fans, we acknowledge, like, that's going to be the case, and you're not always going to be able to execute at a high level, and you're going to miss some shots sometimes, albeit that's a really pressing issue for the Warriors right now because they haven't been hitting shots for a month. But the thing that you can't hide away from, and the thing that you can never accept as a fan, is when there's blatantly poor effort or the energy is just not there, because that's something you can bring every game, regardless of if you're hitting shots or not, regardless of if you're executing at a high level. And I thought in this game, particularly in that first half, there were some things there where I got pretty mad and got pretty angry. I think Steve got pretty angry as well. Again, he mentioned in his post-game press conference about the spirit and the energy. It's not about the execution as such, making shots. It's about how hard you're playing. And for the Warriors to get outplayed and outworked more so by a team on the second night of a back-to-back who played double overtime the night before, who are missing their franchise star in Jimmy Butler at the moment, who they've obviously sent out of their own accord with a 7-game suspension. That's the real disappointing thing. We can talk about X's and O's. We can analyze the game and why the Warriors are missing shots and their offensive struggles and whatever else. But what I can't handle and what makes me really frustrated is when you don't bring that effort and energy. And there's just some inexcusable aspects to this game. We can talk this whole episode about the Warriors going, every Warrior outside Steph Curry going 6 of 33 from three-point range. Every Warrior not named Steph going 2 of 19 from deep in the first half. Okay, we can talk about that. But I'd rather talk about just inexcusable aspects like the defensive end giving up half a dozen and one opportunities to the Miami Heat. Like, it's one of the simplest things in basketball. If you are going to foul a guy, make sure you foul him hard so he doesn't make the bucket, or just don't foul him at all. Like, make a clear-cut decision. Stop with these half-assed foul attempts where the guy can just play through and get a bucket. The Heat had half a dozen opportunities. Like, I can accept 2 or 3 maybe in a game, right, where you are actually trying to make a defensive play and you accidentally get them and it's an and one, whatever. I can accept 2 or 3. Half a dozen? Are you kidding me? Really? twice in the second half, blatantly fouling three-point shooters. That is just inexcusable. It's the kind of stuff that the Warriors, they cannot afford. They're not good enough to make these kind of blatant mistakes that just should not be happening. Okay? I know Steph played great, and we're going to talk about him positively, I suppose, going forward from this. But the one negative I want to start off with Steph is that entire first half, the lack of energy and spirit that I talk about, that was encapsulated in the final second of the half, where the Warriors get within 11, and I can't remember who missed the three-point attempt for Miami with like 2 seconds on the clock. It looks like the Warriors will go in down 11, and instead Steph just needed to semi-box out Haywood Highsmith. It didn't even have to be a hard box out. Just put his body in the way, and instead basically just almost turns and starts walking back to the locker room before the buzzer even goes. Haywood Highsmith flies over the top and gets a putback layup over Steph. And I know it's hard to criticize Steph because the offensive load and the burden that he carried in that first half, like you can almost appreciate that, hey, he was just stuffed and wanted to get to the locker room, wanted to sit down and try and refresh a little bit for that second half. But that typified the first half. That's exactly what we're talking about. That play there where Steph just didn't even need to grab the rebound, just box him out, put your body in the way ever so slightly, and he doesn't get that ball, or at least he doesn't get the ball in time to then put it back up for a putback layup at the buzzer. And that happens. Like, that's the kind of thing that pisses you off, must be said as a fan. That's what pisses you off. The other thing before I get into some of Thandeka's comments here, it's really interesting because after this game, after the Kings loss on Sunday, this is kind of the first time where I've felt really, really frustrated about what's going on right now. And it takes me back to last season and the exact point, literally the exact point date-wise in the season where the Warriors had 2 home games on, I think it was January 7 and January 10. Okay, we're January 7 right now, American time. January 7 and January 10 last year, 12 months ago at home, the Warriors lose by 15 to a pretty bad Raptors team at Chase Center, and then back that up with a 36-point, I think might have been their worst loss of the season, I think. It's the worst loss ever at Chase Center, actually. A 36-point, 141-105 loss to the Pelicans, right? Who were, they're a play-in tournament team, and then they got booted out pretty quickly in the first round of the playoffs. Like, not a good team. So they lost to 2 pretty bad teams in pretty ugly fashion by a combined 51 points, right? And that I remember talking about that on this podcast 12 months ago and saying these exact same things. Like, this is a spirit thing. This is an energy thing. This is not just an execution thing. There are plenty of execution issues right now, particularly offensively. But there's something deeper here within like the psyche of the team. And Steve mentioned it as like a confidence crisis right now where guys just aren't playing with any confidence. But again, that shouldn't necessarily dive into how much effort you bring to the floor and how hard you're playing, because that's something that, regardless of the confidence with your shot and stuff like that, you should be trying to bring those intangible things to every game. And the Warriors just are not doing that right now. And that's the really frustrating thing. And I remember speaking about it again 12 months ago at the exact same point after those 2 losses against the Raptors and the Pelicans. I remember saying, is this a factor of like the trade deadline coming up and so much speculation around the team and so many different potential things that may happen in the next few weeks here pretty imminently? Does that get into the psyche of the players? And therefore, and I remember vividly questioning this 12 months ago. Do players therefore, maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously, but perhaps more so subconsciously, they think to themselves, you know what? I'm not quite going to go as hard right now than I normally would, because you know what? I could be off the team anyway in a couple of weeks. Am I really going to dive on the ball for a loose ball opportunity there, dive on the floor and go get that loose ball? Am I really going to hustle and get that rebound if I'm off the team in 2 weeks anyway? And I just wonder if the same kind of thing's happening again, where, again, the Warriors just didn't bring any energy in this game, didn't fight hard enough for it. And I wonder if it's because basically everyone bar Steph is a potential trade candidate, right? On this team. They just are. And fortunately, the Warriors, like, they were able to get going a little bit, and they almost got going to a point where it blew away any chance of a substantial trade before last year's trade deadline. So I do wonder if that will happen again, where they kind of get back into the swing of things by the end of January. But that's kind of what I'm questioning right now, whether all this trade speculation, which happens around a lot of teams, it must be said, but particularly the Warriors are one of those teams right now where there is a lot of chatter going on. And I just wonder if that does impact pretty negatively on just how hard players are willing to work and fight individually. And then that obviously comes out in the team effort, which just was not there in this game. Like, there is no excuse for being outworked, out-hustled by a team who have had their own issues, who have had their own chemistry issues, who played a double overtime game less than 24 hours earlier. No excuses. Then Decker says, shoot 53s and making 14 is diabolical. Common sense should tell them to get in the paint. Questions, what does Buddy do that Moody can't? We need a big and a scorer. Wiggins has been disappointing. We were behind by 1, then 1 minute later we're down 10. All right, let me get through some of those. So the shoot 53s. Warriors go 14 to 50 again. Steph goes 8 of 17 in this game. Steph had 31 points. Warriors heavily relying on him again. There's a silver lining to this, just quickly. If there's a silver lining to this, it might almost be a good thing that the Warriors lost this game to a team that they should have beat given the circumstances. They should have beat Miami tonight given the circumstances. There's one silver lining to it. It's that, hey, this team needs change. It needs change. And really, there's no answers on the current roster. Cool, GP2's out. Cool, Pods is out. They're going to come back on this upcoming 4-game road trip. Cool. Are they really the answers? No, they're not. They just flat out aren't. And so the answers really come, okay, you can wait for Kuminga, and Kuminga will come back, and they desperately missed him in this game, and they did against the Kings on Sunday as well. So he'll help. But any real answers come via a trade. They just do. And maybe a loss like this, maybe the silver lining is it forces Mike Dunleavy Jr. in the front office to be more urgent on a deal here that, again, comes in the next few days or the next week potentially, rather than waiting right up until the deadline. Because I tweeted out during the game, during that first half, if the Warriors are going to play like this, they're probably going to find themselves 5 games under 500 by the deadline. And whatever trade you make at that point, who the hell cares? Because you're probably already out of playoff contention. You're too far behind at that stage. So maybe the silver lining is it does force Mike Dunleavy Jr. to push the button a little bit on something here rather imminently. The 14 of 50 from 3, again, 6 of 33 without Steph. So Miami played zone for majority of the game. And you know what? The Warriors actually got some pretty good open looks from 3. Buddy Hield, Dennis Schroeder, Wiggins, like, they got some pretty decent looks from 3, and they just could not hit anything, which has been the common case of the Warriors going back to the start of December, maybe even a slightly earlier. Aside from the back-to-back wins to start the year, they have just absolutely crapped themselves offensively. They are the worst shooting team in the league, field goal percentage-wise, basically. So it's no surprise. And if you're a team watching this game, you think, okay, we should probably try and get some zone defense going a bit more, because these guys could not hit water if they fell out of a boat. They also do not have any kind of interior presence to try and take advantage of a zone, try and break the zone. And again, that's why Kuminga's absence was so felt in this game, because not only do they need him just from a general scoring standpoint, he was their second leading scorer before he got injured, but just his ability to get to the paint, to get to the rim and put pressure on the defense that way is sorely missed. Like, the Warriors just don't have it. Okay, Trace nearly had a career high in this game, 19 points, 9 of 12 shooting. He actually did get inside sometimes and finish. Like, imagine if you had Kuminga out there being able to do that, a much more polished offensive player than Trace, no doubt about that. Like, Kuminga could have gone off and had nearly 30 in that game. That's kind of the way Miami were defending. Now, maybe they wouldn't have been defending if Kuminga was out there, but again, that works in your favor. And so it's just really just like Wiggins. We needed Wiggins to step up in Kuminga's absence. Just a really quiet performance, really dismal. 9 points, 4 of 10 shooting, did nothing. Right? Did nothing. So Yeah, I mean, shooting 53s and making 14. I don't know what the answer is. Like you've almost given the roster, you've almost just got to keep firing. Like and this is the issue: is the roster is built that without Kuminga out there, you don't have anything else. Like you might as well keep firing away and hope for the best. Because what else are you going to do? You're going to try and get inside with who? With who? Okay, like Draymond, he doesn't finish well around the rim. Trace doesn't generally finish well around the rim. Wiggins just isn't really using his athleticism enough around the rim. So without Kuminga, what are you doing? And this is why, like, a guy like Vucevic, not only could he actually space the floor for you a bit, but he actually does have a bit of a low post game. And I know it's completely against the Warrior style, but the Warrior style is almost very teams can guard it quite easily right now. It's just heavily three-based, and hopefully, you shoot well one night and you might win a game, but pretty generally here over the last month, it's been really poor. Like it really has. And so, I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens moving forward here, but offensively, it's tough. And the Warriors need to try something different. Just in regards to Thandeka's other point, we were behind by 1, then 1 minute later, we're down 10. That's something else that really, really pissed me off. So, I think Steph might have made a 3 or something, and then the Warriors were down. Yeah, Steph hit a 3. Warriors found themselves down 2. They found themselves down 2. Buddy Hield on the next offensive possession takes a god-awful shot. Like, horrifically bad shot. He was it Hero on him, or I can't even remember who was guarding him, but he puts, I don't know. I don't even want to explain it. It's that disgusting. But he tries to put the moves on. He ends up going to a step back, contested corner 3, which misses horrifically badly. It wasn't even close. And it was so far off that Miami couldn't get the rebound. And all of a sudden, the ball goes back out of bounds, and it's still Warrior ball. Then there was an away from the play foul where Trace and Terry Rozier got caught up a bit. Steph had a free throw and then brought the Warriors to within 1. So you had the Buddy Hield horrific missed 3 that he missed, and that would have put the Warriors in front. After Steph's free throw, he takes a very, very, very deep three-point attempt, which, again, I know Steph can make those. That's just an inefficient shot. It just is. Okay? I know it might be less inefficient for Steph, but it's a bad shot. He misses it, right? And then all of a sudden, in the space of 54 seconds, Jovic makes a corner 3, makes another corner 3 where he's fouled, doesn't pay it off with the 4-point play. And then Alec Burks makes a wing 3 in 3 straight Miami possessions. And all of a sudden, it's 1-10 in the space of 54 seconds, and the Warriors' chances flush down the toilet. They were hero shots from Buddy Hield and Steph. They were, let's bring the roof down. Right, let's get the fans really up and about. Let me hit this BS hero-style shot that puts us in front, probably forces a Heat timeout, and the fans really get into the game. That's what it was. Rather than, hey, let's play the percentages. And in baseball terms, I know you guys in America, and I know the Fitz and Kalena on the broadcast and heaps of broadcasters around the league, they like to use the baseball terms. It's like, just hit a single or hit a double in that scenario. You don't have to make the home run play. You don't have to hit the incredibly difficult step back 3 or the deep 3 to put the team in front. Just, go inside or try and get a good open catch and shoot look from 3, something like that. That was really poor. Connor says, Joe Blow this season not wanting to put pods in the trade. The man was perfect for this offense. He dropped 35 tonight. That must be in regard to Lowry, Markkanen. I'm not even going to go and look at the Utah box score there. Connor says, it's crazy Jerry Stackhouse coaching defense but couldn't play none. He couldn't do nothing but score. Yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily want to judge coaches for what they did as players, because I'm here also on this podcast analyzing the game. And if you went and watched me play basketball, you'd probably question why on earth this guy has the ability to analyze basketball. But I think analyzing the game and working out different strategies is different to go and executing themselves. And Jerry, defensively, the Warriors they weren't great in this game. The amount of ones they gave up was appalling, but otherwise, they've been pretty good defensively on the season. Like, they're a top 10 defense in the league. All their issues are really mounted to offense. Guns N' Roses says, my Cavs about to beat OKC tomorrow. Cool. Hope they do. Should be. I haven't even looked at the schedule. Where's that being played? good luck to both teams. Should be a good game to watch. I might even try and tune in for that because watching the Warriors right now is not enjoyable. So I might get some enjoyment out of watching the two probably best teams in the league go at it. Mark says, as good as Steph was offensively, his defense was awful. Yeah, I think at 36, when you're carrying this much of an offensive load, you probably got to take possessions off defensively. That's just what the reality is. And maybe if you started, giving Steph some offensive support, he might be able to play a bit harder defensively. Johnny Sparks says they bad because they blew 10 years of draft picks, 0 stars or starters. Guns N' Roses incoming 31-4. That's in regard to the Cavs. Mark says, as if the Warriors played double OT yesterday. Yep, absolutely. The way both teams started, it felt as if Golden State had just played the double overtime against Sacramento and were on the road, not Miami. Guns N' Roses, you know how bad Miami is without Jimmy Butler? Well, he didn't play today. Guns N' Roses pretty happy as a Cavs fan to let us know all about it at the moment. Cornelis says, Wiggs' defense been awful. He got to be a great on-ball defender, and he needs to go. We need Steph, Dre, and JK. Everyone else can go. Keep Loon because always shows up in big games with big rebounds. I think Looney might be one of the first ones to go right now, to be honest, just because he's not in the rotation at all and because he's on an $8 million expiring contract. Guns N' Roses says, Wiggins is only averaging 16 points. You need better offense from Wiggins. Yeah, He's been good offensively this season. He's just not that guy offensively. Like, I think it became pretty clear before Kuminga's injury that, okay, Wiggins is a third scorer. I think that's what he is. Like, again, he averaging, like Andrew Wiggins, if Andrew Wiggins is averaging 16 points, shooting 40% from three, giving you some high-quality defense, which, again, people are questioning, and rightly so. But if he gets back to providing that, high-level perimeter defense, and he's averaging 16 points on 40% three-point shooting, that's fine. I'm happy with that from Andrew Wiggins. But right now they need more from him than that. And that's the issue. It's a roster, it's really a roster issue, and it's obviously a Kuminga injury issue. I think if we're all of a sudden if Kuminga's absent, we're asking Wiggins to be this 20 to 25 point per game scorer over the next month, I think we're going to be not in a great way here. Like, I feel like if that's the expectations, then we're in some trouble. I just don't think he's capable of performing that night in, night out. Like, there's offensive stars in the league who will give you 20 plus every game. They just will. And Wiggins is not that guy. He's just not. He's a solid, real catch and shoot guy nowadays who can give you something every now and again from an isolation perspective. But this is what he is. He's 16, 17 points a game, 40% from three, which is fine. It's fine, but in the right role. Right, with the right supporting cast around him. Mark says, can't blame the Warriors' effort when they can't buy a shot. No, I can. In this game, I can. I can absolutely blame the effort. Okay? I'm more concerned with the effort than the shooting. Yes, it's been an ongoing issue, but I'm going to be more frustrated with a lack of effort because, to me, that's something you can bring every game. I know the shooting will come and go. Right? And it's gone for the last month, really. But the effort is something that should be there every game. And it's generally something throughout all of this season, maybe until the last couple of games, and that Memphis game when they lost by 50. It's generally something I can at least come away from games and say, the Warriors, they tried pretty hard there. It was just, a few frustrating elements, just couldn't make some shots here and there. And that's fine. I understand that. You're not going to win every game. But if my team, as a fan, and it goes with all sport, right? It's not just basketball. It goes with all sport. If I, as a fan, watch a game and I can see that the team I'm supporting is putting in, playing hard, giving 110%, then that's at least I can walk away with that and say, you know what? At least they tried hard in this game. Right. What I can't condone and what I get very frustrated with is when whichever team I support just throw in the towel basically and just don't play with that level of effort and energy that you need. Guns N' Roses says Draymond sucks on offense too. How the hell Draymond got to stay on this team longer than Clay is beyond me. Draymond had 7 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists today. It was pretty close to a triple-double. One made three away from a triple-double. But those numbers kind of belie his impact. I didn't think he had a good game at all. Some of the stuff where, and some of the times it works, but sometimes when he had a play, was in the third quarter maybe, where he just blatantly had a layup and he tried to throw it to Trace, and he does that too much. Like I think he's been better offensively the last 18 months, but there's still times where he should be looking for his own basket and he tries to throw lobs or just, another feed or whatever else. And he did that one to Trace, and Bam was just waiting for it. Like, Bam was not even guarding Draymond. Draymond could have had a wide open layup, and Bam didn't even guard it because he's like, I know what you're going to do here. You're going to try and throw a lob to Trace, and he broke it up, and he got a turnover, and away you go. See you later. Is that your username? Lol, what can you do? Truth. Then Nick says Schroeder was having a career high before he joined the Warriors. Yes, oh my goodness. What does he have? 5 points, 2 of 10. Did have 7 assists. I don't care. I need more than 5 points on 2 of 10 shooting from you in 29 minutes. The fit isn't great. Obviously, we understand that. Hopefully, it gets better, but it's actually been a reasonable period. Now, he did have a couple of reasonable games, like the game that Steph missed on Saturday, where the Warriors won. That was decent, and he's going to be good when Steph's out. Still trying to find a balance there when Steph's in the game, and I mean, again, as Stan Decker said, he was shooting 38.7% from deep, over 18 points a game with the Nets, and with the Warriors, it's pretty ugly. Cornelis says, you're right. He got to demand the ball in post, but hate to say it, that's part of coaching Kerr. Got to demand he get on the block and get to the hole. I think that might be in regard to Wiggins. There's also one play where I think TJD might have had, was it Alec Burks in the fourth quarter? And he got the ball basically in the paint, almost in the paint. And that was just asking for a spin move and finish. And I've seen TJD do that before. Like, he's got some post moves. And instead of backing him down or going to a spin move, he just kicked it back out. And I don't think that's a Trace thing. I think that's a coaching thing where they don't want Trace Jackson Davis to get into his offensive box and try different things. Like, he's a very, I think, being a center at the Warriors, and this is, I think, is a concern if they do trade for an offensively skilled big man, is it's going to take such a different philosophy to how they've played, because being a center with the Warriors over the last 10 years is very simplistic. You play defense, you rebound, you run the floor hard, you make layups, you make dunks, and that's it. You don't really get into any kind of offensive action where you're in isolation or you get on the box and say, hey, give me the ball and let me go to work. You don't do that. So that's going to be the interesting thing for me, is if they do go out and get a Vucevic, which it sounds like they're trying to. Mark Spears of ESPN said on NBA Today earlier that the Warriors are prioritizing that over getting like another shooting guard or someone that could pair better with Steph than what Dennis Schroeder can. And if I'm being honest, that's the right move. That is the right move, to go and get another more offensively talented center. And he obviously mentioned Vucevic. John Collins was mentioned. Walker Kessler was mentioned. Not an offensively skilled guy necessarily, but a bigger guy at center. Valanciunas was mentioned. Miles Turner was mentioned. I think Miles Turner would be the ideal, but I don't see that happening necessarily. I think the Pacers would want to keep him, and the Warriors would have to give up more than what they would for, any of those other guys, including Vucevic. But it is a concern that if you do go and get an offensively skilled big guy, Steve's going to have to change his philosophy fairly significantly. Sandick says, at least TJD has been getting better. Yeah, I mean, he has. Did you hear Steve after the game? That's as mad as I've heard Steve in a post-game press conference, where someone asked him about TJD, who played a career-high 35 minutes, was one off his career-high in points, had 19, 9 of 12 shooting, played well. I suppose him and Steph were the only two players you'd say played well and actually brought it tonight. And then Steve just said, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically said, who cares? Who cares about someone getting, however many points? It's about the team. It's about the team bringing spirit and energy to the game, and we didn't do that. And he was really mad. He couldn't care less about TJD. And I feel bad for Trace, because it's like Trace, it was nothing to do with him, but it was only because he was like referenced, right, as an individual. And Steve was basically saying, hey, it's a team game. I couldn't care about the individual numbers. And so, I felt bad for Trace. But it had nothing to do with him. But Steve was mad, and mad to a point that I've rarely seen him in a post-game press conference about his own team. Okay, he's been mad at, like we saw that Rockets NBA Cup quarterfinal. He was mad about the refereeing, obviously. We've seen him be mad about America's gun laws and other political things. But about his own team, he was pretty frustrated, as we all are. Swin says half the team needs to go. I still don't think Dunleavy in the front office are going to have the knackers, as we call it in Australia. I'm not sure that's a word in America. The nuts, let's say. They're not going to have the nuts to go and swing half the team out. I think if there's a trade, it's probably going to be a max of 3 guys going out, unless all of a sudden there's a star not named Jimmy Butler that becomes available, and then that requires more. Thenica asks, how many players scored double digits? 3, I think. Steph, Trace, and Buddy got to 11, but again, that was not a great 11. He was 4 of 12 shooting, 2 of 9 from 3. Like, him and Schroeder combined for 3 of 16. I thought a lot of those were pretty good looks, apart from the one Buddy took that I mentioned before, when the Warriors were down 2 and he was going for the hero shot. Paula says, I cannot take watching the Warriors any further. Watching our team is depressing. It is right now. It is. I promise you it will turn around to some level. Like, I'm not saying it's turning around into a championship. I'm not even saying it's turning around into the playoffs, but it's not going to be as bad as it was in this game. This was really depressing, as was Sunday's loss to the Kings. It will get better than that, and that's maybe another silver lining you could take from it, albeit not much. Like, the general takeaway is pretty negative, like, right now. But based on, like, this individual game, it can really only go up from these last 2 games. Swin says, why is Mike Dunleavy waiting to make the trade for Ingram or Vooch or both? How much of a hole do you want them in? Yep, it's exactly what I pointed out before. Like, if you wait till the deadline, the season could be over. Just go and make a move now. I know, was it the Warriors talk on X/Twitter earlier, proposed a trade that had Moody and a first-round pick going to Chicago, along with, like, GP2 and Looney or whatever. And initially I was like, Moody and a first. I'm not sure I'd do Moody and a first. It's one or the other. I think the Warriors could get away with doing a first right now for Vucevic. And, working out the salaries, or Moody, whichever way it goes. I'm not sure I'd be giving up both, because I think Chicago would go for one of the 2 right now. Paula says 3 teams warned us about the Buddy full circle effect. Yeah. Swin says Buddy Duddy stinks. Cornelius says we was talking about Wiggs getting on the block. Yeah. Is he that guy, though? And again, that's not really his role on the team. Maybe they need to incorporate some of that. And I just think, again, going back to the offense, like, I think there needs to be a bit more diversity here, because there's just not right now. It's all too easy for the opposing team to guard. It's all 2 3-point reliant, and some nights you're going to shoot the ball well and some nights you're not, and it's certainly been the latter for the last 6 weeks here, essentially, for Golden State. Paula says Curry truly needs to request a trade ASAP. Fortunately for the Warriors, that can't happen, because he's actually not trade eligible until the offseason. so any people that think, and I know it's been mentioned by some highly credentialed people about, okay, would Steph request a trade? It can't happen right now. He signed that extension in the offseason, which I'm pretty sure takes him. I don't think he's trade eligible. Let me just double check that. Geez, we know it's getting pretty sad when we're going on Fanspo and seeing if Steph Curry is indeed trade eligible. What team do we want to put him to? Let's say the Lakers, because that's been thrown about there. I don't even have to orchestrate a simple trade here. It should just tell me. Steph Curry cannot be traded because 6 months have not passed since he was signed to an extension. He would be eligible to be traded after February 25. That's my birthday, 2025. And the deadline's February 6th. So Steph Curry cannot be traded till the offseason. Paula says Schroeder was the worst trade. It hasn't been good. Okay, I'll give you that. Chris says as he should be, the effort tonight was disgraceful. The energy level is just low from the team. Cornelius says, last thing I have to say tonight against Sacramento and tonight with Miami, we got to drive the ball to the hole. Everyone on the team wants to jack up threes. It's ridiculous. No shot blocker and settle. Yeah, like, okay, so we want everyone to drive to the hole. Who does that on this team? Steph. I've been disappointed with Schroeder not doing it as much. Like, I thought that was something he was going to bring to the team, like an actual ability to get by guys and get to the rim. Hasn't really happened, and when he hasn't shot a great percentage there. So who else? Like, that's why we're missing Kuminga, because he does it. That's Kuminga's job. That's what he does. Everyone else on the roster just doesn't really do it. Paul says, Kerr's only mad because he truly realizes he is deficient as a coach. He carries some responsibility. He cannot place all the blame at the feet of the players. The rotations have been brutal. Yes. Yeah, he's definitely got to take some responsibility. I have been less concerned with his rotations recently. The Kyle Anderson thing was weird and I disagreed with, but I don't hate the issue is I don't hate Looney getting DMPs, but it just means you play so small. And that's why the Warriors have another option. Like, I think Steve, yes, deserves some responsibility and blame. And I think he deserves some criticism for the rotations and lineups he puts out there. But he's also limited by this roster. And I think significantly limited. So if you're not going to give the guy the tools to succeed, then how are you going to ask him to succeed? I don't know. Street Stories says Miles Turner is the key. Well, he's a free agent. I don't know. What's he going to be asking for? Because, again, if he's a free agent and you're really risking him only being a short-term rental, you don't want to give up too much. But then why are Indiana going to get rid of him then? I don't know. It was interesting the other day with, I'm not sure I take too much into what Brett Siegel of Clutch Points says, but he did say the Warriors have interest in Aaron Nesmith and could be a third team in a Pacers-Nets trade that lands Cam Johnson with Brooklyn. I don't want to borrow Aaron Nesmith. Like, he's a solid player, don't get me wrong. He's a fine player. He'd come in and start for the Warriors next to Steph at the two guard. Fine, whatever. We don't need another guy like that. Okay. If you're going to be involved in that trade, go and try and get Miles Turner. And if you get Miles Turner, good. And if you can't, then steer clear and say, well, you guys work out the trade by yourselves. Right? Or maybe get in the Cam Johnson business yourself if you're the Warriors, again, and reconvene with the Nets. I don't even think that's... I think the big man thing, I'm happy to hear Mark Spears earlier say that they're after a center next to Draymond. And I'm happy to hear that because I think that's the biggest deficiency right now, and particularly an offensively minded center. Young West says Zion played great in 27 minutes today. Levine and Vucevic putting up all-star numbers this year. Great percentages from them. Yeah, Zion returned today from his injury, looked pretty good. That's something I don't think the Pelicans are going to entertain trading him before the deadline. It's something that could happen in the offseason. I think, maybe, depending on obviously how the rest of the years go for the Pelicans first and foremost, and of course any team that wants to trade for him, like the Warriors, or who potentially might trade for him. I wrote about it for Blue Man Hoop earlier today. The Levine stuff is absolutely a disaster for Golden State because they could have had him for essentially Chris Paul, GP2, and Looney. Really, they could have had him for those three guys, and you take that right now. Now, it probably would have meant they also wouldn't have been able to get Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, DeAnthony Melton in free agency, but who cares? Who cares about some bit-part role players right now when you could have gone and got a guy who is 25 points a game, who is over 40% from three, nearly 50% from the field, a legit all-star level offensive player. The Warriors could have had him. The Warriors, not only could have they had Zach LaVine, they could have probably made that trade and got a pick in and got a first-round pick. That's how low LaVine's value was. That's how much Chicago wanted to get off the rest of his contract. And so I guess hindsight is easy to say on the back of LaVine actually being healthy for the majority of the season and putting up big numbers. In the offseason, it looked like a horrific contract. He was injury-prone. So it's very easy to say in hindsight, but the Warriors could very easily have had Zach LaVine right now. Street Story says Miles Turner is the key, or Vucevic. Yeah, Vandeck says we can't even get offensive rebounds. AAA says Steph and Schroeder both are PGs. They can't play in the same lineup. Steph needs a solid defender at the SG position next to him, and Schroeder just needs to play his game in his own lineup. think that would be ideal. But as others have kind of questioned that previously, and I said, well, who are you playing at the 2 then? Who are you playing at the 2 guard next to Steph if Schroeder's not? Buddy, no thanks. I think Moody's probably the one where the idea of that works. Maybe, but Steve's not going to do it. Pods, no. GP2, no. Lindy Waters, maybe, but probably like the 7 games he played in the starting lineup weren't great. So I don't know what the answer is there. Then Nick says if Steph could go get traded, he should go to the East. The way the Warriors are going, maybe that's a conversation we're having in the offseason. Cornelis says, dang, my bad. If you requested one, they will stop playing and get him what he needs. Possibly, yeah, that'd be interesting. Like that's always a fascinating point is how much, if Steph just applied a bit more pressure to the front office in a way that other stars do, then could we see a shake up here rather than just, the front office seemingly twiddling their thumbs and not doing a whole lot. Mitchell Bro says, J.K. Moody, first round picks and salary fillers for Zion, make it happen. Yeah, there's too many players there. So to get Zion, who's making like 36, 37 million, you'd have to give up Wiggins. You'd have to give up Wiggins or Draymond, which I've kind of hypothesized. Like, would you rather keep Wiggins if you're getting Zion? Because Draymond Zion front court is, at least with many of the same issues where it's a small 4-5 combination who don't stretch the floor. So you'd almost rather keep Wiggins in that scenario. You can't really give up like 5 guys for Zion because then you can't fill out the remainder of your roster. Mitchell Bro says, Zion is a future star, dominant second scoring option, can live in the paint, athletic. Yeah. The injury troubles are the only concern. Like when he plays, he's great. He averages 25 points a game in his career. I love Zion. He's just injury prone. And if he wasn't injury prone, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all about him being available. But maybe the Pelicans, I don't think they'll do it by the deadline, but maybe by the offseason, they decide that we want out of this inconsistent, injury-prone business of Zion Williamson. Maybe. And that's where you could, there have been reports of, you could get this guy on the cheap because of his injury history. And I think that's a risk the Warriors probably should take, but he's still also on $36, $37 million. It's going to take some salary to get there. And I do wonder, like, if I was to make that trade, it might almost have to be Draymond ahead of Wiggins in the trade just because of how the pieces fit. Red Sox, the team loses motivation on defense every time Buddy misses his threes. Just quickly on that. Feels recently in a lot of these games the Warriors have lost, like whenever they make a run, they have a Buddy Hield 3 to like really put an exclamation mark on the run to really get themselves back in the game, and he inevitably misses it. And then just like the air in the building just flattens. Don't know, just feels like that happens all the time. It's weird. AAA says the only way to really upgrade the Warriors is to trade Draymond for a solid PF, say goodbye to Kerr, replace him with Mike Brown, and trade for a strong center. A lot of moving parts in that. Again, I don't think that's something that will happen before the deadline, maybe in the offseason. Paula says, can we pinpoint the issues with Warriors offense? In all seriousness, what is the root cause of a significant dip? Well, they just shot the lights out to start the season. So there was an over, like Buddy Hield shooting like 60% from 3 in his first 7 or 8 games. I think the team's just not that good offensively around Steph. And I think it comes down to like you just don't have a second scoring option who's consistent for you. So when you're a role player, what happens is most often than not, like, yes, there are reliable, consistent role players, but a lot of these guys the Warriors have, and Buddy Hield absolutely epitomizes it. Like, they're up and down. They have good shooting nights, they have good shooting periods, they have bad shooting nights, they have bad shooting periods. Like, that's what a role player kind of is. Like, they're not necessarily like a star player because, especially a guy like Buddy Hield, if he could shoot the ball lights out every game, then he'd be great. He'd be averaging, like he was at the start of the season, averaging 20 plus points, very efficient, be a great offensive player. But yeah, I don't know. The real issues, I suppose, lie with the fact they're so reliant on the 3-point shot. And again, a game like this one today where they don't have anything different, like they don't have a diversity, they don't have Jonathan Kuminga out there who can actually get to the rim and put some pressure on the interior defense of Miami. That's I think what it comes down to. They're not willing to. They don't have an offensively skilled big man, and when you're playing a defensive guy next to Draymond, who's also a defensive guy, like you just can't have too many. Like in today's NBA, you can't have too many limited offensive players out there. And unfortunately, Draymond's a very limited offensive player, even though he's been shooting the ball better the last 18 months. Trace is a pretty limited offensive player. We know that, even though he scored 19 points. He's athletic. He can finish stuff, dunking and whatnot. His layup attempts haven't been great. We know that. When you've got as many limited offensive players that the Warriors have, just makes it really difficult. Like Kyle Anderson's a limited offensive player, right? Gary at GP2 when he's out there, limited offensive player. Pods this season, limited offensive player. Lindy Waters can shoot, but otherwise limited offensive player. Buddy Hield can shoot, otherwise pretty limited offensive player. Okay, doesn't create off the dribble at all. So how many shot creators does this team have? How many guys, when your offense is, bogged down and struggling, how many guys can you give the ball to and say, go make a play for us and get us out of some trouble? It's Steph. I don't think it's Wiggins anymore. Maybe like occasionally on a good night, you can get that from Wiggins. It's Kuminga. I think he can do that for you. Ideally, it would be Schroeder, but he hasn't shown it. So that's basically two guys and maybe Wiggins on a good night and hopefully Schroeder, but we haven't seen it yet. There's just not enough offensive firepower. It's simple as that. Cornell says, got Levine and kept Clay. I'm not sure they would have done that. I'm not sure they would have re-signed Clay and got Levine at the same time. They could have. I suppose they could have just gone deep into the aprons, deep into the tax, but I don't think they would have done both in that situation. Young West says, Waters got more minutes than Moody in this game. Why do we extend Moody's contract if we're not going to play him? It's a good question. We've been asking it all season. Mitchell Bro says, my theory is JK walks in free agency and all the trades the Warriors didn't do because they valued JK waste Steph Curry's final years. Well, he can't walk in free agency. He's a restricted free agent. So he cannot walk in free agency. Like he can get an offer sheet from another team and the Warriors can allow him to walk and say, we're not going to match that. But he can't, he's not an unrestricted free agent. He can't walk to another team. And so the Warriors still have some power there. The issue is if they don't make a trade, then they are putting themselves in a bind where they have to match whatever JK gets offered in free agency, because if you just let him walk for nothing and get absolutely zero after all the trade speculation over the past 2 or 3 years, then that's just a horrific look. So if they do keep him past the deadline, which it sounds like they want to do, then you're going to have to pay him. Simple as that. Cornelis says, you're so right about Buddy threes. We're so used to them going and we make the comeback. I miss them days. Matthew says, it is what it is. We struggle with Miami, Cavs, OKC, and Boston will smoke us. Fortunately, we've already played. Have we played Thunder 3 times already, I think? We've played Boston once and beat them in Boston. So not too many. And we've played Cavs twice. So fortunately, there's only 2 more games against those 3 teams over the remainder of the season. And that's probably one of the only real bits of optimism here is that the Warriors will have an easier schedule going forward here. But again, a game like today against Miami, you expect them to win that game. Paula says, some dry British humour from the Bay occurs, aged 10 years, and we're only halfway through the season. The WNBA will be after him to coach a team. Then Decker says to Matthew that we beat OKC and Boston on the road, but that was when we were good. Mitchell Bro says, would a Vooch and Cam Johnson addition be possible or just one of those guys and some fillers? It would be possible if you're willing to include Wiggins or Draymond, but I don't think they'd include Draymond for either of those guys. So if you're willing to include Wiggins, then yeah. Just doesn't sound like they want to do that. So I think it's more likely that it's one of those 2 guys, and I think it's probably more likely to be Vucevic because by the sound of it, they want a center, which again, as I keep saying, I think is the right move to make, and it's probably a move I'd like to see here in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to finish it up there. We've been going for nearly 50 minutes. Thank you very much to everyone who has commented after a very, very disappointing outing from the Warriors, who now head on a 4-game road trip starting with the Detroit Pistons on Thursday. That is no longer an easy game. The Pistons have been playing very well. Cade Cunningham is a star. And, I mean, have they got the same record as the Warriors or a better record? Pistons are Pistons have been not even quietly good, like just legit really good and creating some buzz. They're 18-18. The 18-18 Golden State Warriors will travel to Detroit to play the 18-18 Pistons on Thursday. Wow, same record as Detroit. I'm not even having a go at Detroit just because they've been so bad over the last 5 years. Yeah. Young West says, do you think we'll make the play-in if we don't make a move? Honestly, don't, especially with no JK. Yeah, it's going to be a struggle. Just to make the play-in. Matthew says the team is full of rejects, though. I'm going to assume you're talking about the Pistons. They've got some talented young players, like Cade's a star. I think Jalen Duran's out injured at the moment. Tobias Harris, I know might call him a reject, but he's a solid veteran player for them. Jaden Ivey's just got injured, which is unfortunate. Osar Thompson has just come back from injury, I think. So they're looking good and looking semi-dangerous. Like they're, what are they, 9th in the East? And they could actually make the play-in tournament and even push for a play-in spot maybe. Matthew's talking about Tim Hardaway from the Mavs. They signed, who's been balling out from them? Malik Beasley, I was going to say. After signing $6 million 1-year deal with them. Anyway, I'm going to finish it up. Thank you very much again to those of you that have commented. If you're watching this on replay on YouTube, thanks very much for tuning in. If you're listening via the podcast feed, likewise as well, you can follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter or on Instagram, TikTok, Golden State with Mates. I'll be back for another post-game live. Let's hope for a better result against the Pistons on Thursday night.